Guy from church becomes obsessed with me, gives me a ride to learn where I live, and then shows up at 4 a.m. This is another story about how my usually spot-on instincts concerning people failed me spectacularly. It starts with an innocent night on the town with my coworker and friend, Georgia. I always just call her G. She's a teensy, pocket-sized elf of a girl who bears a close resemblance to a young Claire Danes, so not altogether unfortunate-looking. This was during a period when boyfriend and I were separated. She was single too, so we went out to the local watering holes together quite often. It was that period of our lives when a night on the town meant dressing to the nines and then drinking, dancing, and flirting all night long. Now, as for myself, I very rarely drink. I get inebriated even less often. My limit is usually 1 mixed drink or 2 beers. I just don't like to put myself into a state where I'm not in control, especially in a bar kind of setting where you really need to be on your guard. For this reason, I usually drove whenever we went to the local watering holes. But that night, there was something wrong with my car. If I remember correctly, there was an exhaust leak. It wasn't something that would keep the car from running, but could possibly cause us to be pulled over. Not a scenario that someone who has a drunk passenger and potentially a drink or two in their system wants to invite. Since we didn't want to run the risk of having any run-ins with the law, we decided that G would drive. To make a long story short, G got spectacularly drunk and decided to leave with an ex that she happened to run into during the night. "Don't worry though," she says. "James said he would take you home." James was the nice-looking guy that she'd introduced me to during the night. She told me that they went to the same church and she'd known him since she was a kid, and he was a really nice guy. James and I had been talking and dancing, and yes, even flirting a little as the night progressed. Because I felt like we'd gotten to know each other a bit, and because he came with G's stamp of approval, not something she normally gave to anyone readily, I felt fairly comfortable accepting a ride home from him. Also, I was kind of put on the spot since G had already asked James and told me about it in front of him. I didn't want to insult a guy I potentially wanted to go out with. Looking back, I wish to whatever you worship that I'd just called a cab. On the way to my place, James dropped a lot of hints. "I'm not ready to call it a night. I'd like to hang out a bit more. I could use another beer," among other things he said. I casually told him that I was tired and ready for bed, and thanked him for the ride. He asked for a kiss, and I gave him a playful peck on the cheek, patted him on the arm, and shut the car door. The next day, I went out to run errands, and the phone rings as I'm walking out the door. It's James wanting to hang out. I'm tired, so I say he can come over and we'll watch a movie and hang out for a short while. When I hang up, I see that he's left a couple of messages while I was out. A little pushy, but okay, I guess. Maybe he just really likes me. We're sitting on the couch watching a movie and he goes from friendly companion to full-on make-out mode in 0.2 seconds. I mean, 1 second we're sitting on the couch at a comfortable distance, not holding hands or even touching each other, and the next he's practically on top of me, ramming his tongue down my throat. Oh no, dude. Homegirl don't play like that. So I'm telling him no, and he's acting like he doesn't get it. He's getting slightly more and more aggressively affectionate, and I'm starting to low-key panic. I don't remember what I said exactly, but I did eventually manage to get him out the door, relatively unscathed, I thought, save for a copious amount of unwanted slobber. When I went to change for bed later, I found finger marks on my upper arms from where he'd gripped me so hard. The next night, I get approximately 10 calls from James. I didn't answer, and he left voicemails. Every single time. This was before everyone had electronic leashes, aka cell phones. I myself only had a landline, so it was a lot easier to ghost someone back then. I figured I'd just not answer the phone and he'd eventually give up, like most sensible people, right? Wrong. My phone rings at 4 a.m. Now, we know nothing good happens at that hour of the night. People don't call you up to chat, so when I was jolted out of sleep, I answered the phone automatically, without even pausing to think or look at caller ID. Oh boy, it's James. I hear, "What are you doing?" "Are you kidding me? I'm sleeping." "No, you're not." "Yes, I am. That's what most people do at 4 a.m. on a work night." "Why is your living room light on then?" You know that old saying, "my blood ran cold"? Well, I always thought it was a dramatic phrase to describe sudden fear. But you don't fully understand it until you experience it the way I did. He was calling me from right outside my door. I was single, lived alone, and had no weapon. I was in the habit of leaving certain lights on at all times, because quite honestly, I'm afraid of the dark. I feel safer with lights on and even sleep with a bedside lamp on. I always have since I was a child. I don't remember what I said back except that it involved a lot of swearing and it ended with him pounding on my door and calling me repeatedly for about a half hour or so. I eventually had to call the police to get rid of him. If I was wiser back then, I'd have gotten a protective order, but I wasn't. The next day, I sarcastically thanked G for the setup, and she was furious when she saw the bruises on my arms. She ended up admitting that she didn't really know James all that well, but they'd been acquainted for a long time and he seemed like a nice guy. He kept up the psycho-dialing for a while, but eventually quit when G confronted him about my bruises and threatened to expose him to their church community, and worse, his mother. Thank goodness. I hope that since then James has learned that a ride home doesn't entitle you to a date or anything else from a girl. This was over a decade ago and I live with my boyfriend now. The time for police and other intervention has passed. Yes, I probably should have told the cops, but sadly I didn't. At least I'm safe and I got rid of him. Oh god, what an absolute creep. So let's try and draw a timeline here. This was pre-Me Too, obviously, and apparently cell phones weren't a universal thing, so it could be as early as the 90s. I don't know if that means that this guy was just in a media bubble where pursuing a woman and grand weird gestures was still a thing you could do, and whether it was kind of expected for some guys, but seriously, creepy as heck anyway, church boy. I don't care how keen you are or how romantic you think it is, but when the cops get called on you, maybe that's the point where you stop. Although apparently her unleashing the full fury of her adult vocabulary on him didn't work either, so I guess he was just sort of immune to the word no. Honestly, I think this guy deserved his church and mum being told about this anyway. Because if he wasn't punished for his ongoing behavior, and it's likely that he just found another woman to completely ignore obvious signs from. He needs the people around him to monitor his behavior and get him some sort of professional help. We tend to come down harder on guys like James these days, but they often end up just surrounding themselves with other like-minded people on the internet and becoming incels or something. So they still have trouble contemplating that they might be the problem here. It goes on and on. If you like Am I the Jerk, you're probably going to love Am I the Genius. Check it out, linked below. Also, go to amithejerk.com/submit if you would like to submit your own stories. Today I messed up by slapping the beef in front of my 6-year-old. Okay, so hear me out. This happened last night. Hear me out. Let me set the scene. Yesterday, my wife, 36, and my daughter, 13, tested positive for COVID and were banished to one or both of their bedrooms. My eldest son, 18, never leaves his room because video games are his life, but has also been feeling pretty crappy despite a negative test result, though he's already had COVID once. This leaves my youngest son, age 6, and me, 35, being the only ones in the house to feel fine, and have never contracted the virus and thusly have free reign of the rest of the house. As any decent father and husband would do, I sent them all a group text explaining that if this was the zombie virus, they'd all be dead, and 6-year-old and I would be the family's sole survivors and have to find a way to carry on without them, and asked when dinner would be done, so I began preparing the meal. The scene is set. I love corned beef, not just for St. Patrick's Day, but all year. My wife does not love corned beef. She doesn't like it or even tolerate it, mostly. 2 nights ago, I'd spent several hours preparing a corned beef because we'd planned to make corned beef hash for dinner last night. My wife will only eat corned beef if it's my homemade corned beef hash. Regardless of everyone's sick status, I continued to prepare corned beef hash for dinner. My 6-year-old is in the kitchen with me as I gather the onion, garlic, butter, potatoes, and the other bits. He's quite helpful and especially loves helping in the kitchen. As we finish up our dicing and prep work, I go to the fridge and grab the corned beef that was prepared the night before. Boiled twice, slow roasted at low temperature, tender, delicious, wrapped in foil. I place it on the counter and ask 6-year-old if he was excited for dinner. He asks, "What are we having again?" forgetting what it's called, to which I reply excitedly, "Corned beef hash," and smacked the wrapped meat with my hand. I didn't smack this chunk of protein with my dominant hand, but as luck would have it, I did smack it with the hand that has my Fitbit secured around the waist. At the exact moment that I physically subdue the roast, my Fitbit begins vibrating violently to alert me that I've reached my step goal for the day. I remark, "Cool, apparently that got me the final steps for the day." The 6-year-old asks, "What did, slapping the beef?" I suppress a chuckle and reply with a simple, "Yeah," thinking that that would be the end of it. Nope, boy was I wrong. 6-year-old proceeds to tell me that I need to slap the beef every day to make sure I meet my step goal. Then he tells me that he wants a Fitbit so he can slap the beef and meet his step goals. After this, he runs at a full sprint down the back hall towards, but not into, my room, currently housing my wife and daughter. And he tells the two of them that Daddy got his step count by slapping the beef, and he's going to get a Fitbit so he can slap the beef, and together both of us are going to slap the beef every day to make sure that we get our steps in and meet our goals. I head down the hall towards him and I hear my wife and daughter laughing hysterically. I kneel down, look him in the eye, and tell him in as normal tone as I can manage, "That's a secret men have to keep from women for thousands of years. You're not supposed to tell them that. It's for men only." And I wink. His little face lights up. He loves secrets. Who doesn't? He proceeds to tell his mum and sister to forget what they've heard. He tells them that they know nothing. Lastly, he informs them that we'll slap the beef when they aren't around. I then took off my Fitbit and made a delicious meal. I've got 100 great stories like this about him. My speech at his wedding will be epic. In short, smacked a piece of meat in front of my son, which unintentionally earned my step goal on my Fitbit. Son proceeded to tell his mum and sister that he and I were going to slap the beef every day to make sure we reach our Fitbit goals. You sick, twisted man. Also, very well played. I was this kid growing up right up until the age of 15. An inability to spot a euphemism, even as it thrusts its warm, juicy beef straight under my nose, is a curse that brings us endless humiliation. But I can also say that it brought those around me endless joy, to the points where now, in my adult life, if I see a dangling opportunity to say something borderline inappropriate instead of a direct and innuendo-free line, I will as often as not grab it and take the subsequent pounding from my peers, just for the fun of it. Embrace your role as the expeller of the unfortunate phrasing, son of the author, and you will be the belle of the ball in life. I've even heard it can be a great way to avoid getting beaten up in prison. But seriously, this poor kid is going to realize what you've done to him one day and hold you directly responsible. I just hope that he didn't tell all his friends and teachers in school about this. Perhaps the author didn't think that part through. Because honestly, 6-year-olds just love to ramble on about whatever notable stuff happened to them lately, and I think there's a greater than 50% chance of a teacher hearing this kid telling his peers about him and Daddy slap the beef together. You know I'm your boss, right? Entitled kid and entitled mother try to get me fired for not rewarding the entitled kid's rudeness. This is a long one, so I apologize. To preface it all, I used to work in an after-school care. So once the kids in my primary school, which is elementary school for you Yanks, had finished school for the day at around 3-ish, about 60 or 70 kids would then come over to our building on campus and chill out until their parents came to pick them up around 5:45 p.m. We'd give them afternoon tea and then watch over them as they pretty much just play games and do arts and crafts and such. A lot of the kids that we looked after were full-time kids, meaning that we had them 5 days a week. And most of, if not all of the holidays from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., meaning that all in all I'm spending a lot of time with other people's kids as a sort of pseudo-guardian and parent role model. So using manners and general good behavior is extremely important to me as it helps to inform the rest of their lives. During my time there, I had an interesting run-in with an entitled parent and their equally, if not more entitled son. Bear in mind that this all happened 4 years ago, so the details might be a bit hazy. But such an obvious lack of respect from both parents and children made this encounter stay in my mind. I was playing with a soccer ball in school hall with a few other kids. The entitled kid comes up to me and grabs my shirt. "Give me your ball." "Oh, sorry man, we're playing with it now." I pointed at the other kids. "But you can jump in the game if you want." "I said give me the ball." "Sorry kid, not with an attitude like that. But if you want to join in a game with us, by all means." "You know I'm your boss, right?" "Excuse me? Give me the ball now or I'll have you fired." I was flabbergasted at such a blatantly rude attempt to intimidate me. Once again, no deal, but thanks for playing. The kid storms off and I think nothing of it until later, closer to home time. Entitled mum joins the battle and confronts me. Why did you steal the ball off my son? What the hell were you thinking? Oh, is that what he told you? No, I was already playing a game with a group of kids when he demanded I give him the ball we were playing with. Now, had he asked nicely and used his manners, I would have considered it and I would have started a different game. However, I don't reward disrespect and rudeness here. He doesn't have to use his manners. You're getting paid to do whatever you have to keep him happy. You've ruined his day and mine. I hope you're happy. I'm going to have a word with your supervisor. You're not fit to look after children. At this point, I'm pretty incensed about being told I'm not fit to look after children, so I go off on this lady. Me? Listen, lady, I don't reward bad behavior. If you don't like how I do things here, then by all means, there's a fine after-school establishment up the road that will be more than happy to accommodate you and your family. Bear in mind, no one would put up with such rude behavior from that kid. How dare you? We've been here for years. You can't talk to me like that. She storms off and starts talking to my head supervisor. My head supervisor is a very kind but firm lady, and she doesn't have a bar of it, as this isn't the first time entitled kid had been acting up. Head supervisor calmly explains to the entitled parent that she supports my decision and that if indeed they do have a problem, then they should try the other after-school care program up the road. We had a waiting list of about 30 kids, so replacing them wouldn't be an issue. The entitled parent, after finding out that there was a higher chance of being kicked out of the program rather than me being fired, stormed out of the office with entitled kid in tow. This wasn't my first battle with crappy parents, and it certainly wasn't my last. I'm glad I didn't get fired as well. I feel for the kid because he's getting a crap deal with parents that enable his behavior. That being said, someone has to bring him back to the real world. One interaction at a time. Thanks for coming to my TED Talk. In short, kid doesn't get what they want, jilted parent tries to get me fired, and gets shut down by head supervisor. Yeah, there's definitely a lot of learned behavior on display here. If this kid doesn't learn that he can't just behave like his Karen mum in any given situation soon, he's going to have a tough time socially and a tougher time in the rest of his life. This is on his parents. I'll say that it's the first story of this sort that I've seen where the parent seems to actually believe that the kid in question should dictate his whim to educators, though. Normally the parents in question are just content with trying to shield their kids from bad grades and detention, not try to get people fired for not expressly following the divine will of their younger tyrants. Absolutely delusional, and they backed off when they realized that the after-school program rightfully wasn't taking any crap from them. Awesome. Am I the jerk for leaving in the middle of a celebration because of the toast my husband gave? I, a 25-year-old woman, married my husband, 31, 3 years ago. I'm currently pregnant with our first baby together. We found out it's a girl, and my in-laws wanted to invite us for dinner for gender reveal announcement and celebration. We got there and saw many relatives coming to congratulate us and celebrate it. It was bigger than expected, which made me nervous because I'm not a fan of being around many people. We sat at the dinner table and I barely ate. I was feeling so much anxiety and was sort of upset that my husband didn't warn me about how many people were coming. But I tried to stay calm and collected. Anyways, after the announcement and in the middle of the celebration, my husband wanted to give a toast. He opened a bottle and poured a drink and wished that our daughter be healthy, happy, but look nothing like me. Everyone at the table laughed. I sat there in shock while he kept laughing with them. I felt so much rage and my anxiety got out of hand, not gonna lie. I got up, took my purse and made my way out. His mum followed me asking if I was okay. I told her I just wanted to go home. He came to the door asking what was wrong. That's when we started arguing. He said this was a joke toast and that my reaction was over the top. But the thing is, ever since I got pregnant, he kept hinting that he doesn't want our daughter to look like me. He even once got up in the morning and first thing he told me was how much he wished our daughter looked nothing like me. It hurt me, while I'm already dealing with my low self-esteem and anxiety. I wanted to go home, but he said I was being a baby and that I should learn to take a effing joke. I said he made everyone laugh at me, but he defensively said it didn't warrant me trying to walk out of dinner and be so disrespectful to the relatives who came to celebrate and share our joy. I went home and he called many times telling me to get my insecurities in check before I pass them on to our daughter. He urged me to get therapy and stop acting so dramatically like how I did in front of his family. I think leaving dinner wasn't the best solution, but I just got overwhelmed. Am I the jerk? Ugh, this is just gross. He made a pretty mean joke about you in front of your families, and apparently they all laughed at it? Then he dismissed your feelings out of hand when you just wanted to go home? Honestly, I'm sorry that this guy is the father of your children. Multiple instances of saying he hopes the kid doesn't look like you? What's the subtext? Because it's either that he thinks you're ugly or that you cheated, and neither of those options are endearing, even as a joke. And if your daughter doesn't meet whatever his standard is, it doesn't sound like he's going to be great for her self-esteem either. I hope that you can either magically make him do a 180 on his behavior, or get the kid a better stepdad. My condolences. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories. Or if you want to check out some great music, check out easymode.com. If you like Am I the Jerk, give Am I the Genius a shot. Everything linked in the description.